Sure.
The Honourable Clayton Cosgrove.
Mr Speaker, I'm very glad that the National Party are talking about their so-called glorious sort of Nuremberg-like rally that happened on the weekend, because out of that, the Prime Minister came out of that triumphant in his own mind that the National Party faithful, of course, all of whom who could...
Point of order, the Honourable Jerry Brownlee.
It was a completely unacceptable reference that was made by that member. He should be made to withdraw and apologise for it. You cannot use words that relate to that particular regime in this House in other contexts, and it should not be used in this in the context of this debate when it is reference to another party as well.
I think if
I just say this for the record, so I think the member has got it completely wrong.
Order,
but I withdraw an apology.
Order. Had the member referred to something to do with a Nazi-style conference, that would have been out of order. I'm loath to keep we all the time are ruling words out of order. I mean, I guess members and I appreciate the members' preparedness to withdraw it, but I think we've just got to be careful to not be ruling words out endlessly. Over the years I've been in. Well, all right, the member shouldn't be interjecting, although I understand the depth of feeling around some of these issues. But, I mean, the reference is made through words, and I accept the member. I thank the member for withdrawing his comment, and let's let it lie at that. I appreciate that. Thank the member. Honourable Clayton Cosgrove.
Thanks. With no link to that, I think the member's gone troppo, but we won't go there.
Oh, no order. That's not helpful.
No reference there. So, sir, he had a bad day yesterday, sir. We're a High Court judge. We have it now in writing from a High Court judge confirming what everybody knows, sir, in Canterbury around the place, that Jerry Brownlee is incompetent, and we now have the papers to prove it, sir. But let's go back to the great rally, sir, the National Party conference, and out of that came out of the Prime Minister and announced a loyalty scheme. A loyalty scheme as part of one of the biggest wealth transfers, sir, in our history, I suspect we'll look back on, from those who cannot afford it, sir, to those who can. And he came into this House with a loyalty scheme, sir, an admission of defeat, because if the Prime Minister felt, as he's trumpeted, as Jerry Brownlee has all the National Party members have, that these shares in our assets will be retained almost infinitum in the future by ordinary Kiwi mums and dads, then the question remains, why do you need a loyalty scheme, and why will that loyalty scheme be paid on the back of all those who cannot afford the $1,000 to $2,000 parcels, sir? The Prime Minister then came into the House, and I note this for the press gallery, because the press gallery, when we get up in the House from time to time, sir, when we're in government, noted, as did the then opposition, were at pains to ask us to provide detail around costings and other things. Yet the Prime Minister gets up yesterday, from my memory, asked for detail around the loyalty scheme. Zero. Hadn't thought it through. Asked for a costing around the loyalty scheme. Zero. Didn't have the numbers. Then decided to criticise this side of the House for references to an authoritative Treasury report from his own government department, but couldn't put $1 figure on the costings, $1 figure on the impact, no detail, no reference at all. Now, there are those in the media who would term that as perhaps policy on the hoof. That term, sir, I think is too light for this. Now, the Prime Minister on radio called me a fool for references I made around the SOEs. Well, I say this to the Prime Minister, that only a fool would swap revenue-generating assets making around 18% for debt servicing costs around 5%, and every Kiwi who can balance their housekeeping and make the budget work every day has worked that out. The fool is the Prime Minister, sir. The fool is the Prime Minister, because the Prime Minister has tried to say to people who already own the assets, that they can benevolently buy those assets back for a second time, because we do know they own it. Then he said to them that those who do buy in, those who can afford $1,000 or $2,000, and if they can, ordinary Kiwis, I suspect, will pay off the 20% off the credit card rather than invest in this. But to those who can afford it, he says they'll get a loyalty bonus. To those who can't afford it, they get nothing. And then, of course, sir, we have the issue of possible Maori tribal and iwi challenges. And yet the Prime Minister and his ilk go ahead, bludgeon this through, bludgeon an IPO through, under the worst market conditions you can possibly have, and under the potential threat, sir, of legal action. And I say, colleagues, how will that be resolved? Well, that will be resolved, of course, sir, in the tried and true way of the Prime Minister to make a deal. I suspect it will be resolved through a share allocation, sir. So we have a bonus share allocation, but Kiwis are so loyal that they don't need it, but the Prime Minister's thrown it in. And by the way, that bonus matures, hey presto, in about 3 years' time. And when is that, colleagues? Just after the next election. And I ask the National Party, given they haven't made up their mind on much, will they guarantee that that bonus issue, that loyalty scheme, will mature prior to the next election? Prior to the next election, say in 2.5 years' time. Because that is a bribe and a con, sir, simply designed so the Prime Minister can say all the Kiwis are in until they get the windfall bonus in the lead up to an election, and then we know Kiwis will be out and foreign investors will be the ones in, sir.
Nikki Wagner.
Koto, Mr. Speaker.